Merci. Donc, nous allons faire la lecture des questions qui ont été transmises par courriel à partir de la semaine de vendredi dernier. Donc, la première question nous vient de Madame Sarina Conti. Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank you for reading and answering these questions. I find this format for submitting questions very convenient, and I appreciate you all taking the time to respond. My question, I am wondering when Gouin West will be repaved. There are two sections that have been terrible to drive and bike and walk on for years, and the road is only getting worse. The two sections are just west of Saint-Charles, as soon as you turn onto Gouin from Saint-Charles, until Rue Julie, and again further down between Descageux and Rue Coursol. The city keeps patching up the sections, but it only makes it worse. Thank you.
Mrs. Conti, thank you very much for your question. And in fact, we have quite a number of residents that do use this format to ask questions. Those, of course, that don't reach us on a regular basis, whether it's me, our services, or the members of council, find an opportunity to be able to do that and watch us from home and replay not only their question, but our answer, and also visualize some of the other folks that are answering or asking the questions that may be important to you. This is a question that we were asked last council, and I have on occasion discussed this with residents that live in the area. Mr. Luc Marion had also asked this question last month, and we understand definitely the importance of this area being done. It is much more complicated than just a simple patching or surface patch, and this is something that we looked at carefully before we did any of the work necessary in having to go back and dig it up and try to find the root cause of the issue. So there are 3 steps to this approach that we're looking at. And as I mentioned last month, I have to tell you again exactly what we said the last month because it still holds true today. These patches are there because some structural problems have been observed in the area, and in places where we need to address them immediately by leveling and compacting the gravel under the paving, okay? So this is the first step. Just a simple paving job would not do the job enough to take care of these structural problems. And this is important for the user to be able to circulate there safely on an immediate term, as the road is highly deformed right now, and I know it very well because I pass by that area virtually every day, and I'm on a bike, but I can imagine the difficulty that there is not only for the cars but the pedestrians that have to navigate through this area. And such an intervention is good, but we also decided to do a more global and future-oriented intervention on a short term. The second step of the 3 is planned for 2021, which is next year, and aims to remove a layer of the asphalt and replace it with new paving on the whole section between Descageux and Noël. And this intervention would bring the road to a durable state and prevent really further degradation for a few more years at least. Similar works have been done last year and can be observed near this site on Bibot, Legault, Rouleau, among other streets that we did in the borough, to give you an idea of the type of work when we talk about a resurfacing. On the step 3, we plan on redoing the section between Descageux and Coursol completely in 2025. And we plan on addressing the sidewalk issue and the underground pipe problem. However, as you may expect, this is more of a complex solution and requires that we modify the path, the paving of Gouin and the pathing, the navigating through Gouin to fit with the existing posts and driveways. As the boulevard will be offsetted, we will have to redesign this whole section. And so we've listened to the residents when we've been told, for example, the folks that are walking in that little area of our community and don't have access to sidewalks, for example. And so this is something in the longer term that we're looking at revising and making sure that we provide those, that infrastructure there to keep everyone safer. And as we will be doing work next year, there will be a 3-year moratorium on this section starting from 2021. And that is for us to be able to plan accordingly and do the proper interventions. You mentioned also an area that exists further east on Gouin near St. Charles. The existing pavement will be repaved by new asphalt, which is the section between Beaulieu and Jeremy, before November 15th. That is something that is planned already. That is something that was planned to be redone, and that is slated to be completed before November 15th. And then, of course, we have the area that you also mentioned that was further east, closer to St. Charles, and that is something that we've been looking with Montreal to obtain that information and be able to provide that to you at hopefully a sooner than later date. But that is an issue that we are aware of and have been aware of, and we're working with our partners in Montreal to find a solution for that small section, between Jeremy and closer to St. Charles. Thank you very much for taking the time to write us.
Madame Martha Bond, concerning the site plans for the construction of many new single-family dwellings in the borough on the agenda, what flood prevention rules are required? At least one house that is being rebuilt was flooded in 2017 or 2019. No or few permanent flood control measures have so far been constructed by the borough, city, or province, so the risk of severe flooding in some areas remain high. Please briefly summarize the projects that are potentially affected and the prevention measures.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bond, for taking the time to write us and ask us a very important question, and one that we look at on a regular basis every time we have projects that are, whether they're close to a flood zone or waterfront. These are issues that we look at on a continual basis, not to mention our efforts not only with the City of Montreal but with the different levels of government to find permanent solutions to any potential future flooding that we may have in our community. The property on 19,101 Gouin West is the only one affected, for your information, by the 2017 floods, which will be rebuilt. The new building is located, however, outside of the 0 to 20-year flood zone and outside of the ZIS, which is the Special Intervention Zone decreed by the Government of Quebec. It is also outside the PHEC zone, which is the highest known tides, resulting from the CMM, if you remember, the Communauté Métropolitaine de Montréal interim control regulation, which is applied to a letter by the Urban Planning Department here at the borough. Moreover, no part of the construction will be located below the level of the drainage basins. Reconstruction is therefore authorized without special measures for flooding for this property, and this is the only one that you see tonight that is subject to any discussion regarding the flood zone. And in fact, I've explained to you why this is something that is authorized according to all the information I stated.
Monsieur James Bond, concerning item 20.01 and 20.03, subsidies for various organizations, does the borough require or perform themselves a cost-benefit analysis and otherwise evaluate if the subsidies represent an efficient and effective expenditure for value to the citizens of Pierrefonds? Are audits performed to verify that the money is properly spent in line of the goals of the expenditures, and how the council ensures that no conflict of interest exists between the borough government and the organizations receiving funds?
Mr. Bond, thank you very much for the question. This is something that we're asked on occasion by not only the citizens from time to time, but also some of the organizations that want to know how the process works in order for them to be eligible for some of the funding that comes from primarily the programs that are offered through the City of Montreal. Organizations applying for the City of Montreal grants must register in order to apply for the grant and submit their projects online. This is something that is done on a regular basis, and most, if not all, of the organizations know of this in advance. All call for proposals have their own criteria to respect, of course, depending on what the program and what the projects are. All projects submitted must respect the criteria put in place by the City of Montreal. If the projects do not respect the criteria, they are refused. Projects received by organizations are all evaluated by the committee composed of not only borough employees, the few borough employees, and employees of the respective departments of the City of Montreal. Therefore, there is no conflict of interest between organizations applying for the evaluation committee due to the fact that no employee is on a board of directors of the organization requesting the funds. The organizations, Mr. Bond, who send in their projects must submit a list of documents as well, and one of these documents is the latest financial statements of their organization. The organizations whose projects have been accepted must hand in not only a mid-year report, but also a final report to the borough, which is sent to the City of Montreal, which is very specific in terms of the information that is asked. And I know this firsthand because these were programs that we were managing when we were in the administration in Montreal. If there are any discrepancies with the project, the funds are returned to the City of Montreal. The grants represent an efficient and effective expenditure for value to the citizens of Pierrefonds because they are providing projects, and these projects are there to help underprivileged families, children and youth, providing prevention measures through various programs, activities, and workshops to fight against poverty and violence. And I'm going to go even further than that, Mr. Bond. We make a very strong effort here. We have a team in our recreation department, social development department, that reaches out to our different organizations in our borough and make it known that there are programs with the different due dates and the criteria and the type of projects that the City of Montreal is looking for in order that they understand how they become eligible. And so we make sure that all our organizations not only have the information firsthand, but also to be able to provide the support necessary for them to go through the process of filling out these requests and having them at least considered obtaining the funding available to better our community for the most vulnerable, if you will. So I appreciate and thank you very much for your question, Mr. Bond.
Monsieur Ross Stitt, good evening. Black Lives Matter. In regard to current events, we should all take the time to reflect on this and take action to demand change to put an end to systemic racism. In that regard is my question. On June 30th, 2020, Snowden City Councilor Marvin Rotrand stated that $75 million should be reallocated from the police budget to other areas. He said that the City of Montreal has per capita the highest spending on any city in Canada on its police force. He was not happy that the police had refused to tell the Public Security Council if he used facial recognition technology or not. Our Security Council is, in fact, the body that is in charge of the police, and they had to go through access to information to obtain this information. Policing our police has been a major problem in Montreal as well. What would you say to defunding the police, either totally or in part, by reallocating part of its budget to services to help our citizens? This budget takes up the largest share of the city's total, which is over $5 billion. Thank you.
Mr. Stitt, thank you very much for the question. And as you know, with the unfortunate developments that we've been witness to for the last, not only last weeks and months, but through the many decades and through history, the process of what we see now is really a process of accountability and analysis. And defunding or reallocating of funds can only happen if and when all the information is made available to the public, of course. Certainly continuing to fund organizations to complement and assist our SPVM is critical and must continue and be re-evaluated. This question, in my opinion, should be asked to our Montreal mayor and her administration, as I am not sure, to be honest, if she or her administration has clearly answered. My objective, not only now, but has always been, is to provide security and safety to all our citizens, and if another model is proposed following these consultation initiatives, then we can decide collectively. Again, I urge you, Mr. Stitt, to ask the city administration their stand on it and how they feel about defunding the police. But I can tell you here that if that measure is ever taken and a decision has to be made, I think the public, we and the public, have to be involved in that process, have to have all that information and know how we go about funding the different organizations that can assist ultimately the police in doing their work and be able to reduce some of the incidents, if not all the incidents that we see on a too often basis that have, impacted our community and our society to the degree that it has. So I appreciate your question, Mr. Stitt. I hope that was an answer that was at least reflective on my part, that I was able to answer that in a way that made some sense rather than just say yes or no. And I urge you to ask not only the city administration, but other elected officials in Montreal as well how they feel about defunding the police. Thank you.
Madame Jennifer Ignacio, bonjour. J'aimerais connaître plus de détails sur le projet lié au règlement CA 290040-44 et l'incidence sur les parcs des anciens combattants liant au parc Raoul-Lorrain. Est-ce qu'il y aura un passage entre ces deux parcs? Quelles seront les mesures prises pour garantir la sécurité des lieux et pour éviter le flânage sur ces lieux? Merci.
Madame Ignacio, merci beaucoup pour la question. Nous n'avons pas encore analysé les propositions possibles pour l'aménagement du terrain acquis par la Ville dans ses règlements. Et l'analyse des propositions sera réalisée dans la prochaine année. Une chose est sûre que ce terrain est situé présentement dans la carte, sur la carte qui est la zone d'intervention spéciale du gouvernement. On ne sait pas nécessairement qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire sur ce terrain-là. On a regardé plusieurs options. La première étape pour nous comme arrondissement, comme administration, c'est d'avoir ce terrain et d'avoir l'opportunité dans le futur de faire quelque chose comme agrandir le parc actuel, faire un lien entre le parc et le collège ou autre solution à venir. Une chose est sûre, c'est que le flânage, on sait très bien que le parc à cet endroit est très fréquenté. On est en communication, constante communication avec l'SPVM. On sait très bien que l'SPVM a intervenu sur les lieux plusieurs fois. L'utilisation est là. Effectivement, les gens y vont de partout pour aller à une place qui est quand même améliorée de qu'est-ce qu'on avait au début. Vous savez, c'était un projet du 375e anniversaire de Montréal. On est très fiers de ce parc. C'est sûr qu'on a du travail à faire. L'autre chose, l'effet que le chalet est fermé, qui n'est pas ouvert, sans surveillance, aussi nous aide pas dans la situation de flânage, mais c'est quelque chose qu'on travaille avec nos partenaires, entre autres l'SPVM, pour corriger la situation et de donner une meilleure qualité de vie aux gens qui demeurent dans ce secteur. Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Madame Huguette Garot, suite à ma requête numéro de référence 20-196-489 concernant le projet ST 1617 sur la rue Rose et le boulevard Lalande, ma question est celle-ci. Les arbres, pourquoi avoir planté autant d'arbres le long de ma clôture, surtout des lilas? Oui, c'est beau des lilas, mais je suis allergique. Que comptez-vous faire pour remédier à cette situation? Et sans compter qu'une fois devenus grands, nous n'aurons plus aucune vue sur la rivière. Je trouve ça déplorable. Merci de m'avoir entendu.
Madame Garot, merci beaucoup pour la question. On a demandé à nos services d'évaluer la situation et d'être en contact avec vous, j'espère très bientôt, pour trouver une solution à ce problème. Effectivement, les allergies, c'est une chose. La vue sur la rive, ça, c'est une autre. Mais aussi, c'est de planter les espèces à cet endroit, de faire un genre de mur, si vous voulez, naturel pour diviser ou séparer les résidents et le parc. Mais on a transmis l'information à nos services, Madame Garot, et on est en train d'évaluer la demande et de voir qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire outre que de planter des lilas à côté de votre clôture. Comme j'ai dit, on espère d'avoir quelqu'un chez vous ou vous appeler cette semaine, mais on va essayer de faire ça cette semaine. Si ce n'est pas possible, ça va aller à la semaine prochaine, mais on va essayer de trouver une solution pour vous. Merci.
Et la dernière question pour ce soir, M. Bernard Daunet. Les feux de circulation au coin de Pitfield et la voie de service de l'autoroute 13 semblent avoir envenimé la circulation dû à un châssis croisé de voies obligatoires. Est-ce que des ajustements sont envisagés afin d'amenuiser la situation?
Merci beaucoup pour la question. On sait très bien qu'on a un enjeu sur la rue Pitfield et la 13. On savait dès le début que c'était un projet pilote. J'ai communiqué, moi personnellement, avec Mobilité Montréal et les autres partenaires qui gèrent cet endroit pour expliquer la situation et de dire qu'on a un problème, surtout les heures de pointe. On était supposé d'avoir 2 voies qui tournaient à gauche sur la même voie présentement, mais maintenant on a 2, oui, effectivement, mais l'autre, c'est l'autre partie pour aller prendre Gouin direction nord sur la 13, Pitfield, pour aller chercher Gouin. On sait très bien que les gens qui tournent de Gouin, ça cause un peu de trafic, surtout le matin, pour aller chercher la 13. Les feux fonctionnent, mais l'effet qu'on a juste une voie qui tourne à gauche au bout de Pitfield cause un problème. On a identifié quelques problématiques, pas juste moi, pas juste le conseil, mais aussi les services qui sont en constante communication avec nos collègues à la Ville de Montréal. On sait que déjà, ils ont confirmé qu'ils vont faire des améliorations cette semaine. Ils vont ajouter aussi la signalisation pour aider les gens de mieux comprendre comment ça fonctionne à cet espace-là. Et il reste à voir. Maintenant, le but de tout ça, c'est d'avoir plus de fluidité à cet endroit-là. Et je pense que les feux nous aident beaucoup pour les gens qui continuent sur Pitfield pour aller chercher la 13 et la 40 par la suite. Le problème qu'on a présentement, c'est que les gens qui virent vers la 13 pour aller chercher la 13 direction Laval bloquent 2, des fois 3 voies pour aller tourner à gauche parce qu'on n'a pas assez d'espace. L'SPVM aussi est au courant de cette situation-là et depuis nos commentaires, ils ont donné, je crois, à peu près 70 contraventions. Pour moi, la solution, c'est de ne pas donner nécessairement des contraventions, c'est éduquer le public comment ça fonctionne, mais aussi d'améliorer la situation pour donner un meilleur accès aux gens. Et c'est ça qu'on est en train de faire, pas juste à mon niveau comme élu, mais aussi avec nos services et la Ville de Montréal. Et j'espère que la situation va s'améliorer très bientôt. Surtout, l'information que j'ai eue cet après-midi, c'est qu'ils travaillent présentement sur un plan d'action pour améliorer la situation et en plus ajouter la signalisation. Merci beaucoup de prendre le temps de m'envoyer la question.
Alors, ceci met fin à la période de questions. Nous pouvons procéder à l'adoption de l'ordre du jour pour ce soir.